Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 363, cover dated early January 1999. And this is part 3 of 6 of the ongoing storyline, The Hunt for Xavier. And the cover is by Chris Bachalo, inked by Tim Townsend. We've got cover captions as well. Professor X is back, but why is he leading the Brotherhood? And there in the background we have the members of the Brotherhood in question. So the Toad and the Blob, they're expected. But also here, do you recognize this character? It's Mimic. And in the background, remember this guy from Adjectiveless X-Men number 50? It's Post, who formerly was a type of harbinger, or at least an agent of Onslaught. So this is intriguing. It teases maybe that there's a touch of Onslaught still about Xavier. We'll have to get into the issue itself to discover all. Let's open this one up to the first page. And it opens in San Francisco, and my research has led me to discover that this is pronounced Ghirardelli Square, San Francisco. I've never been to San Francisco before, but you get some key locations in this particular issue, which leads me to think that Bachalo did some research for this. And it opens with a mundane conversation about which is the best kind of chocolate, whether it's milk, dark, or white chocolate. And of course the answer is, and I've said this in a few replies to subscriber comments recently, it's a saying of Julius Caesar's, and that is in Latin, de gustibus non est disputandum, which is to say that there's no arguing about taste. But let's focus in on the story, because what happens here is you see these splashdowns in San Francisco Bay, and that marks the arrival of something sinister. So let's have a look and see what that might be. Turn the page and we get these vertical panels and the emergence from the waters of the bay of this Cerebro unit. And it is scanning, and it discovers, by virtue of its scan, an amphibian from the family Bufonidae. Catalog suspended, resume location correction. So that's a toad here, and that is the point of transition to the Toad, member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants from the very beginning. And this version of the Toad, very well suited to Chris Bachalo's style. You can see how he's drawing him here, leaping about, and also the Toad in this particular iteration seems to be mentally ill as well. And here he is climbing about Alcatraz, the prison island off the coast of San Francisco, closed in this era and closed for government servicing, state servicing there, according to the third-person narration. And here is the Toad outside what seems like a prison cell and repeating, lunch, 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 for the bald man with the hunch, an apple a day. And he throws through the bars of the cell an apple, which is caught by Professor X. So in terms of the hunt for Xavier, there were two options: that he was in the former Soviet Republic of Tajikistan, or in San Francisco. Two biosignatures showed up in Uncanny X-Men number 361, or rather 362, and this is where he turns out to be, in San Francisco. And of course, Storm divided the X-Men into two groupings. She went to Tajikistan, and Wolverine headed up the other group, going to San Francisco to search for the Professor. So the Professor here says, "You're not well, Toad. Were I not forced to remain in this incinerator, I would try to help you." And the Toad responds, "Help a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, Xavier? Times have changed. Times have changed," as this fly buzzes about his face. So what is going on here? Is the Professor a prisoner of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants? Well, let's continue and see what transpires in the continuing dialogue. The Professor responds to Toad, "Toad, Assure me that you have not harmed any of the guards that were watching the island when you and your brothers took it. And Toad says, guards, 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 and prisoners, Xavier behind bars. The guards are safe. Hurt them is to hurt ourselves, right? Hurting them will only worsen the plight of mutants everywhere, right? Might as well hurt him. Us mutants will never get a fair shake in the world anyway. That's why old alliances are reforming, because the old fight was the real fight. The professor says, it proves not. The X-Men will soon arrive and right these wrongs that are being perpetrated against mutant kind. And Toad replies, I heard the X-Men were in Florida and they weren't themselves anymore. So now they're worse than ever, or maybe I heard they died. I don't remember which. And the professor says, holding the apple, about to bite into it, you know very little about the world, Toad, and a little knowledge can be very dangerous. Now this is a very interesting visual transition here from one apple to another as Nightcrawler, a mutant with a physical resemblance to a devil, bites into an apple, just as Xavier talks about, and a little knowledge can be very dangerous. There is a subtext of the fall here, the temptation of Adam and Eve, and it makes us wonder whether Professor X, who is drawn here, looking a little bit shady in terms of the expression on his face, whether he has turned to the dark side or is still in the dark side by virtue of some lingering influence of Onslaught, or otherwise. Also down here, I've been noting these in some reviews to this point of another ladybird there. So, as I've said before, Chris Bachalo likes to include ladybirds, hide them in the art, and there's one there just at Nightcrawler's feet. I've said it before too, I like the way that Bachalo draws Nightcrawler. I think he's suited well to drawing certain characters, especially the ones that are visually interesting, like the Toad there with his massive chin, Nightcrawler, Marrow, and maybe he's a little less interesting on more normal looking characters like Kitty Pryde. So, Kitty asked the question to Wolverine, who's off panel. Wolverine, did you accidentally fly us to Holland? And Marrow adds, yeah, what are we doing here? Fresh air, sea breeze, plants, flowers. I think I'm going to be sick. Turn the page. And Wolverine says, you know why we're here. This is one of the two sets of coordinates we got for Professor X from the makeshift Cerebro. So I've gone through that earlier in this video review. And what happens now is there's a bit of business about cloaking the X-Men's transport, which is the Aurora plane, while Wolverine goes on the hunt for Xavier's scent. And he says here, hey, over here, I smell something rotten. So what could that be? Love the detail that Chris Bachalo's putting into the backgrounds in this particular issue. Like I said earlier, looks like he's done some research on the San Francisco location, and he's working it into the backgrounds, and it is nice work indeed. And then we get a splash page. So it comes a few pages into the issue, 22 pages of story and art in this issue. And this is the Cerebro unit that splashed down in San Francisco Bay and that now is emerging and menacing this woman here. And notice the X badges or buttons that she's got on her denim jacket as well. Chris Bachalo always pays attention to the fine details in his art. So you can see there's a lot of third-person narration about this young woman, Maria Muradian, and it turns out that she is humanoid, Homo sapiens superior, latent mutant. And so he says to her, prepare for processing. So she is in shock. Help, oh no, she exclaims. So the title of this particular chapter of the overarching storyline, The Hunt for Xavier, is When You're Unwanted. And the creative team down there, Stephen T. Seagle and Chris Bachalo, credited with story and art. So there's some co-plotting going on. Art Thibert and Tim Townsend credited with the inks. So they're each taking a bunch of pages from this issue for inking, and then the colors are by Liquid. and the digital lettering by Comicraft. You can see that some of the credits there are obscured by the woman's legs. And so she's got a friend, and the two of them run from the Cerebro unit. He's not interested in her friend who's human. Instead, he sends this device that clamps on the back of Maria, who's the latent mutant, and her friend asks, "What did you do to her? What are you?" So the robot replies, "Designate Cerebrite Beta." So this is not the alpha form of Cerebro. So it is an agent. Initiate, directive, catalog, and then an order comes in. Beta, second order specimens detected. Abort current catalog and proceed to coordinates. So the robot stops, acknowledges the message, and stalks off elsewhere in San Francisco. So again, very nice art on this page. Lots of details in the backgrounds. And then here we have another staple of Chris Bachalo's Bag of Tricks, which is the 9-panel grid. As the scene switches to further west in the Bay Area's bohemian hotbed of student anarchy, Berkeley. And we get a little detail on that. It's roughly a 20-minute train ride from the Dutch windmills of Land's End, which we just saw. Particularly rough if you're wearing the highly visible costumes of the X-Men and have to ride the BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit, tenuously anchored to its roof by the strength of Wolverine's forearms alone. So that's how they've made it to this particular stop, and now Kitty's been tasked with finding them civilian clothes. So she sees this homeless person on the bench, and she thinks to herself, "I know Wolverine was kidding when he suggested I walk into the Gap and phase shoplift out some khakis. We've been apart for a long time, but he has to know me better than that. I may have done stuff in the past I'm not so proud of, sneaking out for the U2 concert, fooling around with Pete Wisdom, but I've never been an outright thief." So Kitty does bring another moral perspective to this iteration of the X-Men team. She's got a much more, how will I put it, regular moral perspective on life, different from some of the edgier characters like Wolverine on the team. And so she grabs the clothes bag from this homeless person and leaves some money behind instead. And the homeless person says, "Well, looky there, asking you shall receive," when looking for spare change. But notice this little moment. It's going to be picked up later in the story. Ironically, I'll point it out when we get to it. So everybody gets into their civilian clothes, and Mara's not happy as always. She says, "I thought these clothes were supposed to make us blend in. To what? A carnival? Nobody's going to notice brightly coloured boots beneath these lame disguises." And Wolverine says, "Don't sweat it, Mara. We ain't going to stand out much after all." Turn the page. This is Berkeley. So this is this fruitier, artier, hippier part of San Francisco. And you can see them walking along the street there. I really like details like the curb there that Bachalo is included. And then we get this kind of ordinary life little business of Kitty's eye being taken by the jewellery being sold on the street. Wolverine sniffing for any sign of Xavier's scent. And as I said, Kitty's eye is taken by the jewellery. And the seller there says, "This is real silver, but it's not real leather. I could do 18 on it." And Kitty replies, "It's beautiful. Too bad I left my wallet in the car." And because she spent that, we assume now it was $20. Maybe it was more. Here's the funny bit that I was talking about. Nightcrawler here thinks as Kitty walks away, "Poor Kitty, while I'm at home with the X-Men and left little behind to become one, she gave up a whole life, family, friends, and all she shared with them to be one of us." And then he finds in his pocket, it's not his pocket, it's the homeless person's pocket, a $20 bill. So did it all even out, is the question. Is the homeless person just basically minus their bag of clothes and didn't actually get any additional money unless Kitty gave them a bill that was bigger than a 20. So Nightcrawler says, since there's no way to identify its rightful owner, I might as well put it to good use. So he's going to buy Kitty that Star of David. So I like that kind of angle of these kind of human character moments with the team from Seagle and Bachalo co-plotting this issue. And then back into the story, Kitty notices that Wolverine has been sniffing out scents, and he says, in here, stench of blood, sweat and fears. Charlie's mixed up in it. Doors are locked. Think you can sneak in and have a look? So in she goes, and she sees a scene of disturbance, including a wheelchair, which she infers must have been the professor's, and she thinks it looks like it was run over by a truck or by 6 imposter X-Men from the looks of the specific damage to this place. Is this what happened, Professor? She thinks. Did you go up against our doppelgangers too? So those are Cerebro's X-Men. And she continues, and if so, do we dare hold out hope that you bested them, that we still have a Charles Xavier out in the world to find? Notice here that Bachalo has gone to all horizontal layouts, so you're getting a much more cinematic aesthetic from the full horizontal panels, on that page at least. And then we're with Marrow and a moment here of conflict and prejudice, where this guy says to her, that eyebrow piercing, it's radical, totally primal, is that bone? So Marrow pulls the bone out of her face, hands it to the guy. He's got a girlfriend with him. You trying to freak my girlfriend out, freak, he says. And I like the way Bachalo has drawn his nose, so it's like wrinkled with disgust. That's really well done. And so Marrow's about to start something. What if I am? And then Wolverine butts in. Nice vest, toothpick. Want to eat it? Let's go. So he pulls Marrow out of there. And then they're atop a building looking out over the bay there with the ship sailing on the bay. Really like that. And Wolverine says, scent's pretty much dissipated here, but Kitty saw an exit hole blown out the back of the warehouse. So I'm guessing Chuck went that way across the bay. Nightcrawler says, it's a huge city, Logan. How will we find one man in all of that? And Marrow asks, and when do we eat? I'm starving. So Logan says, you're both covered. I just remembered an old buddy in Chinatown. If something's up, he'll know about it. And Xavier's definitely in trouble. I sorted out the other smells in the air with him, and they ain't pretty. Fakes, firearms, and flubber. Question is, why are they all here together? So Wolverine has an inkling about who are behind those scents. Fakes, firearms, and flubber. And we'll see shortly who they are. Actually, we've seen them already on the cover, yes. And then the scene switches to Utah, which is the relocation for Operation Zero Tolerance, whatever the iteration of that is currently. It's a compound, and in it there is something that the Cerebro unit is hunting for, and it is hunting for experimental nanotechnology of its creator Bastion from its secured holding place. So it takes it there and disappears into the ground, leaving the guards there disturbed at the fact that they missed the covert arrival of this robot unit. And so in the third person narration, we get confirmation that the Cerebro, the AI Cerebro, considers its creator to be Bastion, and that he's involved in its creation, wherever he is, because he's disappeared. Or rather, he was taken into custody by S.H.I.E.L.D. and has disappeared subsequently, so we don't know where he's being held. And then the scene switches to Chinatown. So again, as I said earlier, Bachalo doing his research on the San Francisco location, and doing really nice work here. Liquid also doing nice work with the colouring too. An of the time poster on the wall there, the band Garbage, weren't they kind of like punk grunge band? So there's a poster of that band on the wall. And up they go to pay a visit to Logan's contact in Chinatown, San Francisco. He says, regarding the person they're going to visit, hard to explain how he does what he does any other way I'd believe in, but that he's a mutant is what he's saying. So there's a toad in a jar as well, in this little herbal remedy shop. And this is Logan's contact, the Honorable Black Crane. Now, he doesn't look Asian in terms of his physiognomy. And he says to Logan, look no further. You and your friends are strangers here, Logan. And given the amount of time since we last saw one another, the forming of the People's Republic, wasn't it? I could say the same for you, specifically that he's a stranger in the city. Or a stranger, rather. And the forming of the People's Republic of China, I'm guessing, I mean, that goes back to the 1940s, right? So, again, Logan long lived in the Marvel Universe, and not all of his past stories having been told, which always makes for interesting possibilities to revisit interesting times like World War II. For a Logan untold series of stories, at least in my opinion. And so then back into the business of this story, the Honorable Black Crane says, or continues and says, an honor. I chuckle when I hear a Westerner use that word. It always sounds so Western. You'll excuse me while I finish with my customers. So he does that, and then he gets into giving them some information. He says, Mr. Cho sells low-quality jade jewelry on the wharf. You'd think nothing of him, but he's also the most advanced monkey-style Shaolin master alive. We spar now and then, always to a draw. He will keep your secret, though that is not your primary concern, I know. You seek strangers. The toad is among them. Alcatraz. They are on Alcatraz, but be very careful. There is another that. That is all that I see at this time. Should you live through this, Logan, return to eat and drink with me sometime. The past is a mistress best shared. So the other that he can't fully see is the Cerebro unit. And also there's some shadowy figures there in front of the prison bars. And there we go. So Marrow's not really impressed. That's it. Frog jar, some mumbo jumbo, and he just walks off. We're going to believe some old man who reads tea leaves. Wolverine replies, it's his way. Side, sometimes faith is all you can go on. Let's bust hump over to the prison island. Now, I kind of was taken aback by Wolverine's little piece of dialogue there. Side, sometimes faith is all you can go on. That sort of doesn't sound like Wolverine to me. Wolverine is the natural man. He's the man who's plugged into the facts, into what he can smell and see. So to hear him saying something like faith is all you can go on sometimes rings a little wrong. The person that is more appropriate for that to be said is Nightcrawler, of course. But here's the finishing business of him buying the little Star of David for Kitty. Ah, faith, he exclaims. Wolverine has reminded me, Kitty, this is for you. And so she's very pleased to receive the piece of jewellery as he hangs it round her neck. Kurt, I remember when I was having doubts about coming back to the X-Men. Well, I want to thank you for reminding me. This team is my family and the dream is my faith. And then he teleports them to Alcatraz. So now she's sick from the teleportation. Everything I said in Chinatown about coming back to the team, I'm taking it all back if you ever teleport me anywhere again. Because that's the experience of being teleported by Nightcrawler. It upsets one's stomach. So Marrow's upset there. Wolverine is tougher. But I think what's happened here in the transition from this page to this one is we're getting to the pages that are drawn inked by Art Thibert. And this is a very strange 3/4 reverse profile on Wolverine's head. Look at how flat his nose is to his face and how big the eye is. It looks extremely cartoonish, wonky even. And that's something that you sometimes get with Bachalo, where he overdoes the cartooniness in the art. But anyway, back here, Wolverine also is trying to get his senses together after the teleportation. And he says to everyone, take your time. Winds have got the sense around here all tossed up anyway. Gonna take me a minute to get my head on. And then he gets bopped on the back of his head. And look at that huge fat fist. Who could it be? Don't bother, says the person behind the fist, because all you're going to do is get it knocked back off. Let's turn the page. We're going to get a full page image after the advertisements of the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, or at least this particular team. And so we've got the 4 members there from the cover. We have Mimic. He's got all the powers of your original 5 flunkies, says Blob, and can take on the powers of any mutie he's near. Post, never expected to see him again after X-Men 50. He's a living arsenal. Cross him and he'll blow you away, says Blob. So that's the firearms that Wolverine smelled. This is the flubber, of course. And the fake is Mimic. And then Toad. He's, well, okay, he can hop. It ain't much, but I look out for him. So they're friends. That's nice. And then the Blob says, and this is very redundant, and I'm the Blob, name speaks for itself. I don't know what you're doing here, but you better turn right back around because we give you the Alcatraz death sentence before we give you the Alcatraz death sentence treatment. Okay, so the splash page here, pretty decent. And then Wolverine, of course, you know, like he's not going to be cowed by what the Blob says. We're here for Xavier and we'll leave with him, he replies. And in case you forgot who you're talking to, bub, name's Wolverine. And Marrow, of all people, fills in, and he's the best there is at what he does. On him, X-Men like stink on filth, says Wolverine. That does not sound like Wolverine, like stink on filth. But anyway, whatever, let it go. So here we go. We're going to get a fight. And look, that's interesting in the background. Mimic using Cyclops' optic blast against Kitty Pryde there. She must have phased in order to avoid the concussive force of the blast. We've got Nightcrawler going up against Toad, and we've got Marrow taking on the Blob as Wolverine leaps towards Post. So the fight continues here. Nightcrawler against the Toad. And Nightcrawler has an interesting experience in that he dodged my kick as though he anticipated its placement. How can this be, he thinks. And the Toad says, I'm better than you think. And looks like it punches him in the back of the head. Let's continue here. So we have Marrow trying her best against the Blob. And he's not impressed. You're funny, he says, looking as he grabs her, or punches her rather. I can't be moved or hurt by nothing, especially lame put-downs, he says to Marrow. So Mimic goes up against Kitty Pryde, and this is interesting. Kitty says, Calvin, what are you doing? No more than a few weeks ago, Kurt and I saved your life and took you in. So that's a reference to Excalibur issues 122 to 24. Now you're fighting us? And he replies, a lot can change in a short time. The coming holocaust of mutants our leader warned us about more than warrants radical action. And so Kitty is intrigued. Your leader, the Blob, he can barely get a sentence out. And Mimic replies, play dumb if you want. All it'll get you is hurt. So Wolverine going up against Post here. Last time we tussled Post, you were under the sway of Onslaught. Is that what this is all about? You hoping Charlie will lose it again? But Wolverine thinks to himself, because if he does, we got bigger trouble than I thought. So another page of these all horizontal layouts, quite cinematic. We have the Cerebro unit here. There's some San Francisco PD that are pointing their weapons at it. And it says identify Homo sapien law enforcement unit, disregard. So it hops into the Baywater and it responds to a command. Unit Beta, primary command target located, redirect. So visual established, it says, as it drops into the water, and the visual is on Alcatraz. So it's making its way there. Then back to the fight on Alcatraz, And Kitty's thinking, this is crazy. The Brotherhood has divided us while managing to keep themselves grouped. They've organized and attacking. They're organized and attacking while we've been forced into an uncoordinated defense. Not that that means we can't turn it around. All we have to do is remember what Professor X taught us, and wait a minute, no, it can't be. So she figures out that what Wolverine is also putting together, they're fighting like us and it's screwing us up. They've got our logic, our fight tactics and our moves instead of their own like we'd expect. And Kitty says, exactly. All along we've been thinking that they were holding him prisoner when it's obvious the new Brotherhood must have been trained by, and then it's the Professor. So somehow they've found themselves in front of where the Professor is. Yes, my children, he says, I'm sorry I could not get here sooner to stop this madness. But as you can see, I'm not presently at my best. And the Blob is concerned about the Professor's well-being, which is a slight little twist. Prof, you shouldn't have come in here. It ain't safe. And now Wolverine is astonished. What in blazes are you talking about, fat boy? We've known the man most of our lives. Who are you to tell him what's good for him and what ain't? And Nightcrawler, I like the way that Bachalo's drawing him like hanging upside down from the panels. Asks the Professor, have they harmed you? And Kitty adds, did the mimics steal your powers to turn you over to the wrong side, or? And the Professor says, no, my X-Men, you do not understand. We are all of the same Brotherhood here. And he's sweating as well. As with all wars, enemies can be bound together through the need to fight a mutual foe. I could not notify you of this until this very moment because I'm no longer in possession of my abilities. So he still hasn't regained his telepathic powers. While my genetic predisposition for psychic aptitude remains, my powers do not. And Post says, we wish we would have known that before breaking him out of the Hulkbuster base, but his value is greatest as a teacher. Who, Professor, who has the power to leave you in this much fear? So we're coming to the end of the issue. We're going to have a big reveal, but we know what it is on the last page. Not who, what. Something we've known as long as there have been X-Men. Something that has gained sentience through the arcane manipulations of Bastion during Operation Zero Tolerance. Something you know by the name of, turn the page, it's Cerebro. So there we go. But the Cerebro mechanoid demurs and says no. This unit is designate Beta. Primary target located, secondary objectives, prepare for cataloging. So Alpha's still out there and probably will be held in reserve for the climax of the 6-part story. Next, read X-Men 83, then be here in 30 for Escape from Alcatraz. And I got a comment on this particular page advertising the new spin begins, like a new era of Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man #1, and Amazing Spider-Man #1. So this looks like it's shot directly from John Romita Jr.'s pencils, and I think it looks really good. Obviously the computer coloring is adding a lot to the art as well, but this looks excellent to me. And is there a letters page here? There is. So a couple of letters, 3 letters there. Nothing terribly interesting. Statement of ownership. What's the print run like at the end of 1998? Average number of copies over the 12 months, 386,000. Actual number nearest to filing date, 333,000. So the print run is diminishing year after year. That's not good. But that was the trajectory of comic sales at the end of the 90s. And there you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men number 363. It's midway through the hunt for Xavier. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comment section. If you enjoyed my review and commentary, please like and share the video. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.